Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. After a hiatus of a few weeks, we have with us Major Madhan Kumar again, and we're going to take a look at our neighbors, Pakistan, and the kind of impact that what is going through Sri Lanka might happen at Pakistan too. So let's welcome Major Madhan. Major Madhan, Namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram, sir, and Jai Hind. It's been a pleasure coming back to PGurus after a very, very long time.
Yes,
Thanks for
indeed. Yes, indeed, and you are very much sought after guest for many channels, and I'm very happy to see you participate actively in not just English but also in Tamil channels. I hope that you get to talk to Hindi and other channels too. Believe me, we have one good luck charm, Major Madan. Once you come on PGurus, then suddenly you've got this thing like, oh, this person knows his stuff, and you'll start seeing a lot of invites. So much so that we can't get you back. That is how it is. So let's get to our topic today. Pakistan is going from paycheck to paycheck, so to say. What I would say is aid to aid. So I had said this thing in a monologue, viewers. You may remember this. I had said that China had put a precondition that only if and only if Shehbaz Sharif becomes the prime minister, they will give the next aid tranche, which was supposed to be $3 billion. This was about 4 or 5 months ago when they were trying to convene the parliament, blah, 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 all that stuff. Then whatever I said came true. Shehbaz Sharif became the prime minister. And now word comes that only 2.5 billion has been dispensed by China. And IMF is holding back on its promise of a loan to Pakistan. To understand a little bit more depth, Major Madan, take it away, sir. I will not interrupt you until you tell me that I can ask you questions. Go ahead, sir.
Sir, we saw this political instability. I think we had around 2-3 episodes on what Imran Khan was doing and how he was removed. So this time around, until like the previous coups which has happened, the army played they wanted to project them as a neutral party, both this and this opposition, PTA and his opposition parties. We saw all the drama which happened in the parliament, and then subsequently he was removed from his prime ministership, and later on Shehbaz Sharif and a cocktail of parties took over the current government. The moment they were there, there were some fancy announcements in terms of few austerity measures, like government servants will work on weekends, Saturdays, 6 days working. They'll do from 8-hour shift, they'll do 10 hours of working, and all these fancy things came up. And exactly after 3 weeks, they rolled back this. They said government servants to work from home because there is a severe power shortage. So the power shortage is one critical issue which Pakistan is facing. And we can draw a comparison with the way Sri Lanka has been moving now. Their forest reserve is at all-time low. They don't have, their central bank doesn't have enough money to even pay wages for the next 2-3 months. All they can do is to pay wages for their government servants. They're a very bureaucratic setup of things there, where you find a chunk of revenue goes into paying their defense forces, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, Army predominantly. And then they have their paramilitary forces, and then they have their pension bill. Then they have a huge government setup. So that's taking a toll there. Having said that, like India, they are a major importer of fuel. They import chunk of fuel from Middle East and other countries. So that has taken a hit. Their currency is the currency valuation is going down continuously. It's, I think, around petrol as on today, I think around 236 rupees, if I'm not wrong, and diesel is around 230. Power bills have gone up. They have not been used to taxation raises. So the government is finding it difficult to increase the taxes, because the moment they're going to increase the tax, the government is going to be unstable again, because Imran Khan is out of power, but he's not out. So he is waiting for his chance. And one thing we need to note about Pakistan is that the forex reserve is less. Their IMF bailout package is very, very limited, in the tune of $2.2 billion, I suppose. And then in spite of China paying them the bill, which you had just said, Their forex resource still continues to deplete. Their rupee value against dollar is continuously depleting. That is going to cost them very, very dearly. And they don't export much. They really don't export much. They don't have major export business. Their agriculture is in shambles. All these things put together, the only option now left is to tax people. So they have put some tax load on people in terms of indirect taxes. So that is also creating a certain amount of disturbance there. And Imran Khan famously rolled out the subsidy for poor. He wanted to copy paste the Indian model of the populist, the grain subsidy. We distributed grains. Pakistan doesn't have a distribution channel. So they went up to giving subsidies. You can buy it from a private and you can take 30% subsidy if you deserve so. So all these things put together, their economy is in clear danger. They're clearly following the path of Sri Lanka. Unlike Sri Lanka, where they are heavily dependent on the tourist income and the agriculture exports, here there is not much of tourism as such. So they don't have any avenue of increasing the revenue, or in a way to cut down the cost. Austerity measures, they've been doing it on and off. It's more flashy. Nothing comes back to the books as such. So they're in a very, very bad state. And if you see the inflation, it is currently around at 21.3 compared to last year of 13.8, which is a major jump. And today, India, people are crying about, and even in US, 8% inflation really pinches people. And with the current scenario, this inflation is expected to hit 25 plus by end of this year. So all these things put together, with a very unstable cocktail government, they are heading into clear disaster. But unfortunately, the Pakistanis who are going to come and comment on this show will speak about Kashmir, will speak about toilets in India, will speak about how polluted Ganga is. But the fundamental fact is the entire country, since it was born in 1947, was built up on a false nationalism, which is basically anti-India. Apart from that, they don't, even the educated lot, except few odd people whom I interact with, most of them have built their narrative there. It's in their blood. Hate India. That's it. You're a nationalist if you hate India. By any chance, if you like India, or you say that we want to copy paste my neighbor's model, let's do it this way. Be it chip manufacturing, or be it the IT sector, or the infra projects which India takes on, they are not going to learn from their neighbor. They can always learn, but they are not ready to do it. That's been drilled right from their top. To sum it up, Imran Khan just gave a interview in which he said it's not a rhetoric. We have to read through the lines. First thing he says is Pakistan will not sustain the current this thing. Pakistan is going to collapse economically. There will be an economic emergency. Then Pakistan has to rely on IMF and Western forces, Western countries for its bailout. If we do go for that bailout, Pakistan will be denuclearized. So this is the word. We are the only Islamic nation with a nuclear weapon. So we will be denuclearized the way Ukraine was done in 1990. So that is going to be our plight. And the moment we are denuclearized, we have a very powerful enemy, India, with a very nationalistic government at the helm. So the country may split into three. So Baluch is going to be one. Punjab and Sindh is going to be one province. Pashtun is going to be a separate this thing. And that also will be a devastating end for the army supremacy. These three things is what he told. Now, can we just take it as an opposition leader, uttering these words out of disgruntlement? Yes, possibly 30%, yes. But what he says, the choice of words and what he says is actually true. Now, this is the best time for the world. Whoever is going to give the bailout, except China, or their Gulf cousins, Saudi, Qatar, Emirates, or it may be their Western cousins, US or so. This is the right time to denuclearize Pakistan because their nuclear arms are not going to be safe. If tomorrow something happens the way it happened in Colombo, where score of people just barged into presidential thing.
Palace.
People
Yeah.
see it as a positive. Very people celebrate it as a very people movement, revolution, and so. But end of the day, that's not the way things should work. It ends up into anarchy, and in that case, the homegrown terrorist and the foreign terrorists like Afghanistan, if those nuclear power, the weapons fall into the wrong hands, it's going to be a serious threat not only to the Asian continent, subcontinent, and also to the entire world. So that is where Pakistan is sitting now. Unless or until they're going to increase their taxations and at least reduce their corruption by, say, for example, 20 or 30%. Or we have the scheme which ran in India, I think, 10 years before, where our finance minister then Chidambaram rolled out amnesty scheme. You have to pay some taxes and you can make your black money to your white money. If those sort of measures are not taken, I'm seriously Pakistan is going to be a very troublesome neighbor for us.
Thank you very much for that opening statement, Major Madan. Viewers, please like this video because we are going to touch upon some absolutely fantastic points moving forward from here on, which have not been discussed in the mainstream media, because I usually do my homework before I bring Major Madan on. He has very insightful knowledge. Major Madan, what is this I hear about Imran Khan creating dissension among the army ranks? That the lower strata of the armies, like for example, sepoys and havaldars and so on, sergeants and things like that, that these people seem to be supporting him. So there is first time with Lieutenant Colonel Hamid one side and all Bajwa on one side. So there, at the top there are two factions. Now looks like the factions are coming and spreading down the entire rank and file of the Pakistani army. Let's not worry about Navy and Air Force for the moment. What are your thoughts on that?
He is a very shrewd politician, as he said. So he's not a typical politicians we have in India, especially the opposition. He's very, very shrewd. He knows what he speaks. What he's basically trying to convey to their people is, yes, you guys are the safeguards, life guardians of us. You save our country. But look at your generals. Look at your higher officials. They have palatial houses. Their children study in UK. They have retirement benefits. They're highly corrupt. They control the government. And that is how this country has gone into shambles. So the officer rank and above, especially brigadier and above, and then you have the ground of forces, which is basically the JCOs and other ranks. The Subedas, the Naib Subedas, the Sepoys, right from the rank and file of Pakistani army. He's trying to have a vertical split. So what is going to happen in that sense is they have a resentment. Clearly, the Pakistani ranks and files, the lower echelons definitely have a resentment. But when it is fueled by a very strong opposition party, a very strong politician like Imran Khan, he definitely has a reach. If you see all his rallies, it's sizable amount of people come and attend his rally. So he's still not he's politically out because of the parliament, the number game and so. But still he has a sizable population who are basically the socially lower economic strata people. And he exactly wants to capitalize that, and to fix this guy's, the army generals, especially Bajwa and the other generals, may triumph for corruption charges. The corruption charges are already framed on him. There are certain videos they are still yet to expose. We can expect it very, very soon. There are a lot of videos which people have, their media has it, and their opposition parties has it. So, moment that is done, he doesn't want his future to be something like what happened to Parvez Musharraf or even Nawaz Sharif. So, he wanted to be safe. He believes that once the election come up, he will come up with a thumping majority. And to survive this period, he need to have some hold on the army. And especially you are an opposition, you really don't have any hold on the army. So to have the hold on the army, he need to put that wedge in the ranks and files of the army. And that is what he's been precisely doing it. And there is sizable amount of dissent which is in his favor. And the ex-servicemen, especially the retired officers of Pakistani forces, a chunk of them are with them. And those officers' kids, basically, we call them the Fauji brats. So the second generation, they may be in forces, they may not be in forces. They also, we call them as cantonment kids. So they also have sizable amount of support towards Imran.
That's a first, in fact, because these are entitled people. And for them to look at Imran, that means that their hero worship has probably changed. Major Madan, two other things. First off, we have been looking at the Baloch resistance. What is happening there? I read recently also that another attack took place. And basically, how's the Balochi resistance coming along, sir?
Sir, Baluchis, we saw about those 11, I think 18 odd incidents in the last show with all the video
Yes,
footage. So
yes.
now what happened is they have cracked down on their online presence. So I had a source who sent these videos, through a channel. But those channels has been cracked down. A couple of Twitter handles has been bought down, but still they have their videos have been reaching people. The journalists in Baluch, they in fact publish these videos through various channels. Couple of us get it also. They have been doing the hit and run kind of attack on them. So unlike the earlier one, where the Mujahid brigade went and did that massive attack on them in 3 simultaneous locations, they have kind of moved away from that because their own casualties are high, and Pakistani army has been ruthlessly cracking down in Baluch, especially after the Chinese bomb blast, where the Chinese people got killed. One woman,
Female suicide bomber, we saw
yeah,
that,
yeah,
yes.
the Fidain attack, which happened just outside that Chinese school. So these attacks are now very, very prominent on the heights of Baluch. So all this border post and outpost, which the Pakistani rangers and they have kept it in Baluch, they have been coming under frequent attack. And there are almost 4 attacks since our last interview where they have successfully targeted Pakistani forces, and they have recovered a huge amount of cache of arms and ammunition. So that has been going on. So we can put it this way: on a day-to-day basis, every second day, Baluch has been executing a successful operation, but not at a larger scale. It's at a very smaller scale, and they have been ruthlessly going behind the Chinese businessmen and the Chinese companies there. Mobile towers have been brought down, railway lines have been brought down. They have attacks on the oil pipelines, the gas pipelines, which connects Baluch with the rest of the country. And there have been a couple of attacks on the mining vehicles, all the Chinese vehicles which come and picks up their ore from Baluch. So that thing has been continuing. The another thing is there is no major casualty in terms of Baluch leadership. Pakistan's ISI has been going brutally against their leadership. They want to take the top, leaders of Baluch, but somehow that's not happening. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game which is going on. On the hindsight, they are also been trying to negotiate with Tehrik Taliban. So Tehrik Taliban negotiation is happening with Afghan Taliban as their mediators. So they have been speaking to them. What if it has not been officially, it has not been published or agreed by the Pakistani government, but in practically people out there, they know the Pashtun region of the western region of Pakistan, where the Pashtuns live sizably, certain areas which are well dominated by Tehrik Taliban, Pakistan has ceded it, and Sharia law has been put into place. Their form of Sharia law has been put into place, which clearly means that Pakistani laws are no more applicable in that region. That's the kind of agreement which they've done with TTP. But those negotiations are happening with Afghan Taliban being the mediator for these talks.
Viewers, you can send your questions to the Major with a hashtag #AskMajor. I see some questions. When we don't have the hashtag, it makes it a little bit hard for us to search through. So if you could please reframe your questions with an hashtag #AskMajor and then send the question, that will be easy for us to pick up your questions from the common field. Lots of very, very good questions coming your way, Major. Especially, I saw something about if the country were to be split into multiple parts, what are the legal ramifications for the parent country? Will that retain the name and so on and so forth? I'll come to that in just 1 second, sir. I have a couple of other questions. We are motoring along here, 20 minutes into the show, and I feel like I have a lot of questions for you. One question that I have is, the IMF loan was supposed to be at $6 billion. Now it's come down, way down, now to 2.5 or something like that. And even that, IMF is not saying anything. Now, there was a problem here in that IMF insisted on looking at the terms by which the Chinese were giving the loans to Pakistan. And one of the accusations held against Imran Khan is that he shared the Chinese agreements with the IMF. In other words, no other country before had done this thing. So what do you think is happening in IMF right now?
Sir, IMF is very, very clear in terms of their taxation policy. They want the tax to be increased. Either
that's the only base. Yeah.
So the option which was given to them, either you increase the base, the way which India has done. 7-8 years before, we had around 86 lakh taxpayers for a country of 100 plus crore plus population. Today we are at around 4 crore. So either you expand the base and keep the taxation intact, or the other way is you have to increase the tax rate with whatever the base you have. In either which way, if they are going to increase the tax base, when the inflation is at 21.8% almost, so that is going to really pinch them. When the inflation is high, you tend to push people to save money. You cut down your imports. So you do some austerity measures. And the repo rate gets increased so that you avail much less loan. The interest rate on the loans goes up. So a couple of these measures is done to control the inflation. But if you see, July 2021, they were at 8% inflation. July 2022, they are at 22%, 22 plus inflation. With the current trajectory, it is going to anywhere hit between 25 to 30 in next two, maybe Q3 and Q4, it is going to hit 25 and beyond. Now, in this case, your populist message of subsidies cannot sustain. So IMF clearly says that you cannot roll out subsidies. COVID story is over. Now you cannot give anything free to your people. Second, you need to increase your taxation. Third is the wages salary bill. How much of salary money the government spends on the salary. Now, if this government, which has been a coalition government with a full khichdi together, if they are going to cut down their defense budget, if they are going to cut down the money which they give it to ISI, which in turn goes into nurturing terrorism, now your government is going to go off. Now, who will build the cut? Now, army takes a very, very moral stand. See, look at your politicians; they are bad. Every time they mess up the country, we are the only saviors. Now, this same Kashmir story, this has been told again and again. Even yesterday, supposed to be the Kashmir Martyrs Day, where Sabah Sharif, the PM, said, he was hailing Kashmiris who took up, weapons against India, the entire concept of IOJK and so and so. But these jokers doesn't understand. They don't have the money to actually fight a war or even, a proxy war in Kashmir. That's been in decline now. So somewhere you need to cut the budget. And generally the defense budget, the heads are given, but the minor heads are not given. To any country doesn't want to reveal it. But in this case, the IMF wants to know what's your threat level. You are a nuclearly armed country. So why are you spending so much on weapons? And why are you spending so much on the salaries? So any which way, the current political establishment, even if Imran Khan comes, he cannot do it. Or unless or until they do it, IMF is not going to give anything for free. So finally, this cut down thing, I don't know how the Democrats will play now with Milken and all these guys in place. It's a right time for the world to denuclearize them. It was end of the day, it was a theft. They never developed a nuclear program on their own. Everybody knows it was just it's a still good amount of ISI brain which went into it. They stole the nuclear technology. And their so-called father of nuclear science, he himself has A.Q. Khan has agreed to it. Now it's time for the world to actually denuclearize them. Until then, IMF is not going to open up its pockets. As far as China is concerned, their return on investment is not diminishing; it's negative. As far as CPEC projects are concerned, they have not gained anything. China itself is in distress. Their growth has slowed down. Now, if Chinese want to pump in more money, it is going to be for the territory. So if Karachi, end of the day, if they want a tranche of money, say $5 billion from China, they have to sell out Karachi the way Hambantota was sold out to China.
That's really bad because Karachi is the biggest city. In fact, it is the commercial capital of Pakistan. Major Madan, viewers ask Major is one word, A uppercase and M uppercase with a hashtag in front. I see some people saying ask space Major. I'm just trying to make it easy for us to pick up the question. A lot of questions coming up. We will take as many as possible, but as long as it's on topic. I have just two questions left, Major, and then we can go to questions. The first question I have is, now China has given $2.5 billion. CPEC is not moving forward. What do you think they're expecting in return from Pakistan?
It's just for as far as the China-Pakistan relationship is concerned, the center of this relationship is India. So the so-called two-front war, the military alliances, the military, the liaison officers of Pakistan getting trained in their militaries, co-locating, joint exercises, so and so. And then subsequently comes the investment. When China does all this, it doesn't do it for free. So they have done a lot of investments as far as CPEC is concerned, the dream project of Xi Jinping. So that amount of money, a lot of projects have been called out. If I remember it correctly, it is 26 odd projects have been already called off or have been temporarily stalled. And Pakistan, the other side, has alleged about Chinese businessmen who have got into corruption. So there are a lot of corruption charges pending against the Chinese businessmen. And now comes the Baluch. Now, Baluchis are very, very clear. We are not going to let Chinese steal our minerals, rob our land with all our mineral resources and so on. So minerals are like you just ship it out. You just dig it out from that place. You take it to your country, process it. It's going to be a money. Now that also has come down. Roads and infra is going to take a long wind energy, power, irrigation, and then roads. This is all long-term. It's going to take 20-30 years for them to even break even. But the short-term gain or the quick gain in terms of money is the mining. That has again taken a severe hit. China doesn't want anything more, or they would say they don't want to invest anything more because they don't see an immediate war with India. In that case, they really need to pamper Pakistan. They needed to keep their army up and running. So that is not happening. So China's study says, their own doctrine said that we may expect a war with India, China, somewhere in the year of 2027, 28. So Taiwan is the number one priority. India is, it's still a long-term game. So for a war which you want to do, say for example, after 8 years, the current investment in an enemy's country, with enemy's my friend's country, is not going to work for me if I look at it as a business. So that's why they have toned down on their investments. And on the other hand, they also are looking at a collapse, a dignified collapse of Pakistan, so that they can put their puppet government. It's still not a puppet government because if you clearly see their thing, the political establishment is aligned with China, especially Nawaz Sharif and his brother Shawaz Sharif is aligned with China. Whereas the army is always pro-US. They want their dealings to be more with US. And they proudly announced a couple of years before that we are the revenue generation. And what is the revenue which they are generating is the billions of dollars from US for the so-called war on terrorism. Now, US has pulled out the troops from Afghan. They were no more interested in fighting a direct war on terrorism in the Afghan soil. So now that money has gone. So that's the reason China doesn't want to further put in their investments where they see no point of return. And secondly, they also don't see, there is a clear perception change as far as China is concerned. They expected Russia to just crush Ukraine in a matter of 20 days so they can replicate. So that's not happening. It's been a long drawn war now. It's a long bloody war which has been happening now. So China also rethinks of its military capabilities. With whatever capabilities they have, PLA, they also think recalibrating their military strategies. So they may not go into a direct war with India in the near future. So Pakistan, as of now, becomes irrelevant for them.
You brought up a very interesting point. This is just an observation, Major Madan. Remember that misfired missile from India that landed safely in Pakistan? And that sort of exposed the limitations of the S-300 knockoff design by China. See, Russia had the S-300. They sold it to China. China never just keeps buying. They try to reverse engineer it. They reverse engineer it, give it back, sell it to Pakistan. Pakistan, it just got exposed. So the Chinese weaponry is not tested. It's not proven. And that is a huge problem for China. I don't know how they dream of conquering this place and that place. Hong Kong was taken by surprise. I don't know why. Again, I guess US was caught napping, and US can always use what I call as the Brahmastra, which is to untangle the Hong Kong dollar from the US dollar. The moment they do that, the whole thing is going to collapse in China. Unfortunately, a lot of Wall Street billionaires who have funded the Democrats are the ones who are saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So this is the big story. Last question. I'm hearing reports, and this is for the denuclearization of Pakistan. I'm hearing reports that 4 Middle Eastern countries have been promised nuclear technology by China: Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and Turkey. If there's even 10% truth in this, that essentially means Pakistan is redundant in the Islamic republics, isn't it?
Definitely, the closest Islamic nation towards the nuclear program is Iran. And we can see, because it's a blessing in disguise for Iran as far as the Ukraine-Russia war is concerned. Now, US cannot sanction, or nobody is going to respect US if they're, the sanction on Iran. It's just exists on paper. So every nation has started buying crude from Iran. Now, Iran is a natural gainer. With high crude prices, Saudi is also the natural gainer. From $168 billion or so, they have moved into almost $380 billion of revenue from crude in the current year. The year is not yet over. So that's the amount of money they have gained. So it's for them with a decent relationship with Israel. So this is a possibility. But for sure, Israel is not going to allow any of these nations to be nuclearly armed, or because that's going to be a serious threat for Israel. One nuclear bomb or a nuclear weapon launched on Israel, the country is going to be in ashes. So they are not going to let it allow. If US continues to kind of take a napping stand as far as this scenario is concerned, then definitely you can expect a regime change in US as well. We know how powerful Israelis are, and how powerful the Jewish community, as far as the American banks and the weapon makers are concerned. So it's the choice exists, but either US by choice or by force will not allow it to happen.
Yes, indeed. And viewers, I don't know if you've been following, Israel is going to elections again. And this time, Bibi Netanyahu's coalition appears to be a clear favorite to win. And should that happen, you will see a more hawkish policy from Israel. And that could very well, accentuate what Major Madan just mentioned. So thank you very much, Major Madan. Let's take a quick look at a few questions now. We are about half an hour into our program, maybe 10-15 minutes, if you don't mind, 2-3 questions. There was one question I saw I really liked about the splitting of Pakistan. If it splits into 3 or 4, can we pull that question up? It came at the very beginning. Okay, first question, Nagarajan Srinivasan. Is this the right time to take back POK?
No. We still have time. Because if you do anything in POK, they will use the false nationalism, and then whatever the dissentment which is there among the people, among the provinces, among the caste, creed, and the community, that will all vanish, and they will again. This is a golden chance for them to unite Pakistani people into one this thing. So strategically, we will not be doing that mistake.
What is the chance of TTP joining ISIS Khorasan?
TTP, ISIS Khorasan is a trump card for TTP to negotiate with Taliban. If Taliban takes a soft stand on for Pakistan, in favor of Pakistan, if Taliban doesn't allow TTP to train and operate from Afghanistan, then ISSK would be their natural choice. and you can see a couple of Talibans getting killed by ISISK.
Tough situation. RJ Koch wants to know if Sindhidesh and Baluchistan declare independence, they will each be able to walk away with zero debt, clean balance sheet, and a fresh start. True or false?
See, factually it is true, but the fact is they don't have the critical mass to break away. Now look at Bangladesh. Bangladesh, Mukti Bahini had a critical mass, and then it's far away from this thing. These are two wings of a single country. No other country, I don't think so, exists in the world the way these guys have split the country. But the Sindhis and Baluchis, even put together, they don't have the critical mass to fight against the army. They'll continue to do this proxy war, guerrilla style of attack, keep the area disturbed, stall the development project. But can they really break like Bangladesh? The answer is no.
Yeah, we have to remember that Bangladesh by itself had an economy, which is what helps. I mean, at the end of the day, what happens? Suddenly you become independent, but your workforce has to be paid their salary, which means you have to earn some money, which means you have to have a structure in place to collect taxes and be able to administer. It's a lot of little things, but they all have to be in place. So this breaking up into smaller nations has to be planned out. 5 years or so has to be given, saying that we are going to go on our own. We need help from other countries to help set up the administration and so on and so forth. I'll give you a simple example. Mexico, which is sort of like, neighbor of US, did not have a judicial system until about 25 years ago. And then a lot of the US universities along the border of Mexico, where there were a lot of Spanish-speaking jurists, judges, scholars, and so on, their help was sought so that Mexico's judicial system could be formalized and brought into on par with what is existing around the world. In a way, the British did us a huge favor. The judiciary system itself is okay. It's just that it is slow in India. That's for Western interests. But the system itself is okay. So what I'm trying to say is, breaking up a country, it's not so easy, especially when the power center has been in one part of Pakistan and everybody else has been on the dole out. And suddenly you say, Sindhu, you're free. They have to figure out what their economy is. Also, Major, before we go to the next question, isn't China already controlling the major airports of Pakistan?
Yeah, definitely. They have directly or indirectly have a control on their strategic assets, like Karachi port. Either they had a control on the Gwadar port, and then later now they have control on this port as well. So slowly and slowly, but it's invisible. If you ask any Pakistani guy, he will say no, it's in our control. But the investments, the direct or indirect investments, are all maintained done by China, and they do have strategic. That's the first thing Chinese always do when they enter a country. The way the East Indian company used to take over the coastline. They always used to take over the coastline of the country. Chinese will always take over the strategic assets. That includes the port as well. It's a seaport, airport, or both. They are going to take
that. Next question, please. Nagarajan Srinivasan again. Major Saab, what about tactical nuclear weapons? They could fall into terror groups.
See, this is one place where almost India, China, Russia, all of us will unite. If it falls into the wrong group, it's a threat to China. It's a serious threat to Russia. It's a serious threat to India as well. And spills over to Iran. Most of us doesn't know, the entire, the current Baluch province, a chunk of the area was with Yemen, and later on it was ceded to Pakistan. So this is a common problem. In such scenario, there are only two scenarios which will play up, which eventually has happened in the history in the past. One, all of them get together and kind of, crush it, take the nuclear arms away from those terror groups, or one each uses against the other. Either way. Because anybody who uses a nuclear weapon, the other country is going to retaliate. In this case, India is nuclearly armed, China is nuclearly armed, and in turn, Pakistan is also nuclearly armed. But for a terrorist organization, you can't really react. You can't fire a missile on China. So it depends what kind of risk they are going to take. But the option number 2, or the choice number 2, where each country would like to use these groups to use against another nation, that I would say has got a 20% possibility. unless somebody really stupid enough to do that. But all these nations will unite to kind of let it not happen.
Before we go to the next question, I want to alert our viewers that in about 45 minutes, I'm going to have another live hangout with the head of BJP IT unit of Tamil Nadu, CTR Nirmal Kumar. It concerns India's national security. And please come back and rejoin us. It's about 45 minutes from now. Let's take the next question. AR wants to know, what role can India play in denuclearizing Pakistan? Shall India initiate and drive the process? In that case, what would the border scenario be?
See, denuclearizing Pakistan, India doesn't have a direct role to play, but India has to play a role, which India is eventually doing it, is to keep the pressure on Pakistan. Now, one thing which has slipped in from India's hand is now they are out of grey list as far as the Financial Action Task Forces (FATF) is concerned. Now, that's a place where we kind of missed it. We should have kept the pressure on, moving from grey to black, whereas rather they got away from the grey. So that's how this entire IMF funding and stuff is coming. So in this case, India has to constantly pressurize the US, constantly speak to their Western forces, so that they drive this entire denuclearization process.
As a matter of fact, there is also some more hangouts that I'll be doing on what Pakistan or Pakistani assets in the Americas are doing to harm India's cause. Lots of false narratives, fake narratives going on. Rutgers has just come out with something. I'm going to cover all that stuff in different hangouts. Just stay tuned. Let's really a big problem, guys. I mean, US has become like a magnet for all these people to come and put fake narratives, fake outrage, Islamophobia, when actually the opposite is happening in India. Anyway, topic for a different day. Next question from AK. Sir, how is IK able to take on the army head on? This is unthinkable in Pakistan. Is the army scared?
See, Lankans were able to take on, Lankan army. They are also have a sizable army compared to their population. But if you look at that, scale of protest, there's no government which exists there. Firstly, understand there's no government which exists there. So beyond a point, if army gets into and it picks up arms and then tries to control the crowd, it is going to create a bloodshed. That's not going to help either the army nor the people. It's better the way they handled it. I would say it was still okay. Why? Because Lankans have a huge respect on their army, especially the Buddhist population have a huge respect of the army because of their victory in 2009 Elam War. Now, with such a background, if the same army ends up shooting its own people, even if a couple of people would have got killed, that's going to create a massive setback on the Lankan army. That's the place where people finally bank on. So those officers, I have one retired officer of Lanka was a good friend of mine. I was speaking to him. He just simply said, see, even if I would have had the firing order and the officer on ground, I would have not done it. You can shoot one, you can shoot two, but you can't keep shooting and killing your own people, because that's going to damage the country more. It's already in a shambles. It's in a bad shape. That's why they have done it. As far as Pakistan is concerned, their way of controlling is better. They know their intent. What's the major difference between these two nations is why such a thing would not happen in Pakistan, or Pakistan army still would have control, is because of their intelligence. They spend a chunk of money in intelligence. So when these mass gatherings happen, until or unless people make it a mass movement, not backed up by politicians, there is a remote chance of this happening in Pakistan, but it's not ruled out.
Also, a little bit more about the Nirmal Kumar interview. It's going to be in English and it affects India's national security. So do tune in. It's very important. It's something that everyone should know. Next question from Mandar Karnik. Ask Major, I think the Chinese won't allow Pakistan disintegration yet, as they need them against India. Question is, will the West still support Pakistan?
West will always support Pakistan for the obvious reason. They have to check India, point number one. Second is so-called the unstable Afghanistan. So who is going to do the dirty job of controlling the Taliban, speaking to them? Those hell lot of stuff, the jihadi groups, ISISK, tomorrow and the series of tranches of groups which comes in. Somebody has to speak to them. Somebody has to be the broker. Pakistan is the best broker available as on today. And wherever India goes against the Western forces, like the way the sanctions, crude oil, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar had spoken about it, very vocal in the couple of months. A lot of diplomatic words came up in open. This was the first time. So they need something to use against India. So that's the place where Pakistan comes really handy. As far as China is concerned, yes, they will not allow the disintegration of Pakistan, but this influence is to a certain level. You can buy out politicians, you can buy out a couple of army generals, but you cannot buy the entire Pakistani population. That's not possible. If something like Sri Lanka happens, what could China do in a small nation like Sri Lanka? And they couldn't do anything, right? So similarly, things out here are very volatile. And if Pakistan, it's see, right from 60s you need to watch. At 1960, Pakistan was a better cosmopolitan country than India.
True.
Pakistan was more a free country than India. This is a fact. From 16th, when Yahya Khan was there, and then a couple of generals, the dictatorship which happened, then they went into something called radical Islamization. Now they got into it. The third generation is up now. Now there is no point of going back to what they were. So these groups are also a serious threat to China. Whether they disintegrate or they kind of be in a kind of a civil war kind of an atmosphere, either way it's going to hurt China. So let's see how this goes.
Next question from Kalyan. Ask Major, sir, should India enter and try to break up Pakistan into 4 pieces, or shall we follow, wait and watch?
See, we are not waiting and watching. First of all, it's a wrong notion. A lot of things happens in the hindsight. A lot of things happens in the back door. We don't have to send a large military fighter war the way we did it in 1971, the Indo-Pak war. We don't have to really do that. This country will fall on its own weight. All we need to do it is to, even if it's split, it has to be safe and secure. We cannot have a very rogue nation they are a rogue nation, but we cannot have 3 rogue nations, next to it. If, for example, if POK splits, naturally it's going to come back to India. We already have a setup. We already have a union territory setup. We have those 14 seats, MLA seats available in the Jammu Kashmir Assembly. That's going to be different. But if other provinces break, that's going to create a lot of trouble to all of us. So we have to really take a very small and a very progressive steps toward that to contain Pakistan. All India need to ensure is to show the world that they are a terror factory. They have been nurturing terrorists since 1960s, and till date they are the number 1 producers of terrorists across the globe. No country can support Pakistan. India should ensure to stop the financial aid which any country would give them, or even the IMF, or even if it has been given, it has to be accountable. That's what India has to be doing, and India is doing now.
Last 2 questions. Karthik Vishwanathan wants to know, can Pakistan see a Sri Lanka-like mutiny by public?
They are seeing it. I read a couple of their comments in Twitter and so. But their way of thinking is, for example, today there was a comment by a lot of Pakistanis. Rajapaksa was a Buddhist guy who cracked Islam, who really went behind the Islam people in Lanka. But end of the day, he was given, refugee by an Islamic nation called Maldives. So that's their level of thinking. They can't think beyond that.
And this is Gotabaya, not Mahinda. Mahinda, we don't know where he is.
Yeah.
Last question, sir. Sasanka Varanasi wants to know, what is the strategic advantage of POK? Is it worth the money and effort India has to take to get it back?
Worth the money? Yes, 100%. Today we have deployed around 3.5 lakh of our army there, and then paramilitary forces, JNK, intelligence, and so. We spent a huge amount of money in securing the current form of JNK. If we get those POK heights back, we can see through the CPEC. We have a direct control on the roads which China is building. We have a strategic advantage over China. That's a big advantage we have. And then we also have a strategic advantage over the rest of Pakistan. With all these things put together, it makes sense for us to secure POK at the earliest.
Thank you once again, Major.
Last thing, sir, I want to give an update on this
Please go ahead.
wheat which has been going from India to Afghanistan. So now this guy said that you send India sought permission from Pakistan to use their roads so that those wheat consignments reaches Pakistani Afghani people. And Taliban also requested that allow us to get our wheat from India. So this guy said yes, we will allow it, but there is a condition to it. In the wheat bags, you should not put made in India, and in the trucks, you should not be putting made in India. Nowhere in the wheat bags there should be sign of made in India. We said okay, we'll put it. So, but we will. So our drivers who went from here till such time they were crossing Pakistan, nothing was there. The moment they entered Afghanistan, it was a very big banner which was stuck on the truck that it's with love from India. That's point number one. Second, in lieu of it, wheat is it costs you logistically more. From India to Afghanistan, the actual cost of wheat, the cost of transportation is more than actual cost of wheat. So what we did is we relied on something called protein biscuits. Wheat, end of the day, the people, especially the Afghani kids, they need nutrition. Protein is a very important one. So we made protein, biscuits. Now this guy again put a rule in the cover of the biscuit. The wrapper of the biscuit should not have a "Make in India" sign. It should not have any identity of it is made in India. We said we'll make a plain cover and give it. So one of the guy who was handling this consignment told me later on, it was there in the news as well. The biscuit was printed. The "Make in India" was printed in the biscuit. Now either you have to crush
the cover didn't have it.
The cover it is not there. So that's the level of I would say IQ which these guys work on. Be it their establishment. We think so mighty about Pakistan. Fine, they're the great nation which has a nuclear power, so and so. Fine, that's all fine. But the fact is that they have a serious identity crisis. If you ask a Pakistani if you ask an Indian who's in this, we have a legacy. We have a 3,000, 5,000 year old history. But if you ask them, they're actually our blood brothers. The same genetics, they went there. They want to identify themselves as Arabs. Arabs don't agree them as Arabs. They want to identify themselves as part of the Ottoman Empire. The Turks treat them like I don't want to use that word. So they still have an identity crisis. Pashtun is a separate country. It's a freedom movement. They don't consider themselves as Pakistan. Urdu is their national language. Ask Pakistanis how many of them speak Urdu. Pashtunis doesn't speak. Baluchis doesn't speak. Large population of Sindhus doesn't speak. They have a serious identity crisis. The only thing which binds the entire country together is the anti-India hate. The second thing which binds them together is what is called cricket. Apart from this, they seriously have a very serious identity crisis.
Thanks for clarifying that. And viewers, in Tamil there's a word, and it's a Sanskrit word. It's called alpam. Alpam means you get happy with little stupid things. Alp santoshi is what they say in Hindi also. That's what the Pakistani behavior is and all this stuff. And the better part in this is Afghanistan was saying these guys were stealing wheat on the way. So it's really, really sad how this is.
Palestine is a very, very small nation. Palestine is a really, really small nation. They've been war torn. They've been always on war for 50 years or so. And they get funds from left and right and center from Iran and other Islamic nations. So these guys went and begged for ambulances. Can you believe? From Palestine, these guys went and begged for ambulances. Give us some money. Wherever they go, they call. Who is a successful prime minister of Pakistan is the one who is able to beg better. I went there, the way rhetoric is like this Imran used to do. Inshallah, I got the package of $1.5 billion from Saudi. I'm a successful politician, and there's people used to celebrate. That's been it was supposed to be a very progressive country. It was supposed to be a good country until 1960s. It's the choice of their people and choice of their politicians and their army generals who got the country to this stage. Really sorry for them.
It was one mistake by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He sidestepped 7 generals and took the 8th one because that person sounded the most obsequious. Salam Saab, Salam Saab. That happened to be Zia-ul Haq, who ultimately ended up hanging him. And then he also radicalized Pakistan to a great extent. One last question before we go, Major Madhan. What is the reproductive rate today in Pakistan? I heard it's like 4 or 5. Very, very high number.
I think it's 3.8 and above. It's more
3.8. Okay. Yeah.
and they are very very young population. It's a population explosion. They don't have
Yes.
any way. Their education system is in shambles. Most of them they don't go to schools. I'm talking about primary education. School dropout in India is different. They don't have an infrastructure, education infrastructure to provide them, education. They don't even have a, in fact, PDS public distribution system to provide them nutrition. That's like really in shambles.
Well, we have to wait and see. Just like USSR broke up, where the mothership just said, you guys go and do on your own. I think something like that will happen in Pakistan also, where what is Punjab will remain as Pakistan, and they'll say, okay, this is all we can handle. Sindh, you go. Baluchistan, you go. Pashtunistan, you go. POK anyway would have gone by that time. That's what I think is going to happen. India doesn't need to do anything. This is what is it. This is where it is headed. And Major Madan, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And viewers, if you thought that this was useful, you can express your appreciation by clicking on the super thanks button and donating what you felt was useful by listening to this conversation. Thanks once again, Major Madan. And we'll be back again in a few weeks' time when Major Madan's window opens up to talk more about this. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar, Jai Hind.